Just a quick introduction to Tracxn. So we are one of the leading private market research platforms, and we have been in the market for about last 12 years. And we have also started an initiative with universities about 2 years back. And this has come up from the point where we have seen a lot of rise in entrepreneurship, especially coming from universities. And with that, keeping that in mind, we've started School to Startup, and this is again an initiative that we started keeping in mind that there's such a there's universities who are coming up with entrepreneurship and supporting these programs, and we would love to know more about this from the academia and the expertise of universities, and just try to inspire any entrepreneurs who might be listening to this interview. So to start off, we would love to know a little bit about your journey and what has led you to academia, and how has been your experience so far.
Right, thank you. Well, I started my career in the corporate world, working in the automobile industry, working in the telecommunication industry, mostly in strategy roles, where I got excited about understanding how firms shape their own future and maybe also shape the future of the industry. So I worked also on corporate foresight, so how can we be systematic about that. The curiosity on how to do that better led me eventually to academia, first in Denmark, now in France, here at one of the leading European business schools, where we work very much at the intersection between industry proximity and academic rigor. So that for me helps me to really be close also to what business is all about and how business is changing in these interesting times.
So what are the most exciting projects or research initiatives that you're currently working on?
So I think one of the most exciting for us currently is that we have been working on a maturity model which helps organizations to reflect on their own future preparedness. It's also something which we launched as a self-assessment tool together with the World Economic Forum. So that's a deep reflection on how capable are you as an entrepreneur, as a business leader, to pivot if change is happening around you. How can you profit from change? How can you ride the waves of change towards more interesting business models? So that was very exciting. And the other very exciting thing we're working on is to make sure that as entrepreneurs, we not just think about our own business, but also about the ecosystem which surrounds us. How can we be actually positive toward these ecosystems?
Yeah, so I think this is a very common initiative from most of the universities, that they are not just trying to bring up entrepreneurship, but they're also trying to focus on how overall ecosystem can grow. And I think that is something that I've also heard from few more universities before, and that's a great initiative from your institute as well. So my next question is, what are the trends that you're observing in startup ecosystem that students should pay attention to? And how do you think academia is responding to these trends through any initiatives that universities are taking to build entrepreneurial mindset?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, the first trend we just talked about is really this trend of not just thinking about a viable product and a viable business model, but also about the viability of the impact to the ecosystem. And I think here, even though there's many organizations, academic, also other types of NGOs saying that we need to do more, I think we're moving somewhat from a sustainability 1.0, which was about doing less harm, to sustainability 2.0, which is, okay, what is the positive impact which we can have, and how can we scale this positive impact? So here at EDHEC, I'm leading also what we call the Center for Net Positive Business, which is actually an initiative not just to help our own students, but also beyond that work with several industries to help them accelerate their transition towards a net positive economy. So I think for startups looking for funding, this will be more and more important to have that aspect already worked out. Okay. I think it's also the second aspect, I think, is this turning away somewhat from this notion of disruption, this notion of you need to break things, towards a notion of regeneration. So what can we do as entrepreneurs to regenerate our planet, societies, and that becomes also then a source of additional funding, additional tailwind, so to speak, from governments which might support my ventures, etc. And I think the third, which I would mention, is this moving away from building your startup around intuition, around signals you're capturing, and be way more systematic about understanding what is driving my company today, what factors will drive my business tomorrow. So here I'm really seeing more and more companies working with structured foresight methods and foresight skills to address the future customer in the future markets and in future ecosystems.
Mm-hmm. So that's very interesting, and I think my next question is very much aligned with this, and I'm sure it will be the most difficult question as well. So have you come across any recent student-led projects or startups that have turned into success stories? I'm sure this will be very difficult for you to choose from, but any student success stories that you would like to share?
Sure. So yeah, as you can imagine, we're a big business school. We have 10,000 students, so we have also a lot of startups. We have 3 different incubators, so it would always be difficult to avoid missing out good ones. But what I think excites me most is really the projects which come from young students who just get out of school, because earlier you would have said, okay, you need to have spent 10 years or 20 years in business in order to be a successful startup. While we had, for example, in our last cohort, a team which is still building their business, which have looked through business models to drive circular fashion and drive circular principles. It's another one who works on carbon positive construction materials. They're, however, also together with a big company which is following them and helping them. And what excites me most about these examples is that they apply also advanced methodology. Of course, you would expect that from a professor, that you're not just looking at the outcome, but also how did they get there. So they work with scenario planning about what will the future of the industry look like, how can I build new business models which don't exist, and how can these business models help the industry. So it's about foresight scanning, it's about systems thinking, it's about impact mapping, and then thinking about the long-term viability. What I'm then also very excited about is if we find business models which, beyond being a successful business, can also catalyze industries. And here I would mention maybe 2. We have a focus in my Center for Net Positive Business on the nutrition industry and also the construction and building industry. And today we have a huge task ahead of us to drive the energy transition to decarbonize. And all these sort of old business models which are there, they're struggling. We're investing not even half of what we should invest into the energy transition globally. India being also one of the front runners, actually investing heavily. But to go the last mile into households and so on is very difficult. So a company which I would mention is Enpal. It's a Germany-based company which is leasing energy equipment, starting with photovoltaic, but then also with heat pumps, with storage systems, etc. And this is a very exciting business model because as a homeowner, you don't have any capital expenditure to begin with. All that is pre-financed, and that allows you actually to then scale a business model, and it's also financially very interesting for investors because they become actually the energy providers and the managers of energy. So that's very exciting. I think another one which comes to my mind would be a French-based company, actually one of our alumni, company called Yuka. It's also an app, so it's spelled with a Y, Yuka. And what they did is that they realized that most of the nutrition industry is sort of in the wrong game, in the game of getting more market share by adding more sugar, more fat, more salt, making us all less healthy and less productive. And they said, okay, we need somehow to counterbalance that. So they created actually an open source, high quality platform for nutritional information and also carbon footprint information, which helps consumers make better choices, and it increasingly puts the industry under pressure, or could also formulate it positively, motivates them to think about their formulations, whether they would actually be shown well in Yuka or not. And that's an app which now is also not just in France, but also in the US and UK and in more and more markets. So these kinds of business models we find very, very exciting because they can drive these positive transitions which we need to heal our planet and our societies.
Yes, that's good to know, and I think it's high time we actually start taking initiatives, and I think this can only be possible in a university where the focus is also towards, again, giving back to the society and to our Mother Earth. Now, my next question is, how do you see role of academia involving in startup and innovation space over the next few years? So I think I already know the answer, which you have been doing a lot to, streamline entrepreneurs and try to focus on giving back to the society. But again, we would like you to highlight some of the things that academia is doing here.
Yeah, I think we're in quite a fundamental shift, which goes probably beyond what we just discussed. So I think we're coming from being knowledge providers, sharing theory and so on, to probably getting more into a role of an ecosystem enabler, where we connect not just our startups, but also other startups. So in our case, we will be launching an impact track in order to also attract entrepreneurs from outside our own student body, and put them systematically together with large corporates which need to transform, with alumni who can take the role of business angels. We also have, as a business school, our own venture fund through whom we invest. And of course, we kind of underlying this with this motivation as an ecosystem then, with alumni and startups and so on, to think about how can we be responsible by design. We have also a guide which helps then guide all the stakeholders towards this type of thinking. But I think it's also about really emphasizing and doubling down on building new partnerships in specific sectors. So we have, for example, through our regenerative built environment program, a number of big corporates which are following, sponsoring, giving insights, and then also being potential first clients, anchor clients for our startups. So I think that will be particularly the leading academic institutions getting more and more into this ecosystem enabler role, I would say.
Okay. So any advice or any insight that you would like to give to any budding entrepreneurs who are working in this rapidly evolving ventures and landscape? So any advice that you would like to give to any entrepreneurs who are listening here?
So I think that there's probably three pieces of advice which we also give our entrepreneurs. The first is think in systems. So of course you're in a complex world, and you might say, okay, let's start first focusing on myself, on my customer, and so on, and all that is not wrong. But at the same time, it will not secure the long-term success. So you need to think about what is going on in the industry, what's going on in the ecosystem at large. The second piece of advice is look further ahead. Today we might draw the wrong conclusions from volatility, saying, well, given that the world is very unpredictable, let's stop predicting. And that's probably the opposite of what you should do. In order to prepare for a shifting environment, you need, like a good chess player, actually think about, well, what would be then the measures and countermeasures I would take if I'm seeing that sort of the environment I'm relying on is turning against me. So this planning ahead becomes more important as volatility raises. And then I think the third, you will forgive me for raising this once more, but think about this net positive. How can I build my organization in a way that it's actually for the world, for the society, better that we exist, as opposed to we might be actually living on the expense of the next generation. That will become not just important for us as societies and as the planet, but also for good business sense, because more and more mechanisms, whether it's financial resources, whether it's your customers or the customers of the customers, more and more pressure will be building to be able to show that you are indeed net positive.
Okay. So that's a great advice, and I think every time I ask this question, I have to bring up my notepad and take advice for myself as well. So I think it's not just entrepreneurs. Again, it's applicable to anyone who, it's for everyone for sure. So you did mention a lot of interesting initiatives as well as some of the projects that you're currently working on. But if anyone from our audience would like to learn more about your work, research, or any upcoming projects, do feel free to share any recent publications that you're working on.
Sure. So, I think there's a couple of things which can be useful and which we also have in the public domain. I think the first thing I would mention is maybe this self-assessment tool. So it has just been launched with the World Economic Forum, and I'll be sharing with you the link so that you can share it with your audience. The second thing, for everyone who wants to learn how to think in systems, we created together with the UNESCO a publicly available MOOC. It's hosted on the Coursera platform, but we might be the only course on Coursera, to my knowledge at least, which is completely free, so you don't need to be a subscriber to Coursera to follow it. It's a certificate program on building strategic foresight capabilities. What I could also share is a link to our Responsible by Design guide for entrepreneurs, so all our entrepreneurs go through it. And then, of course, if you want to follow generally our work, LinkedIn is a great place to do it. And I'm also happy to share the link to our Center for Net Positive Business. We're just starting with this as a center. So there's a lot of exciting things to come. Also another self-assessment tool on being net positive coming up. So I'm more than happy to share this. And of course, if any of you wants to follow up on this or want to become an entrepreneur in one of our incubators, then feel free to reach out.
Yes. Thank you so much, Rene. It was great interacting with you, and I'm sure a lot of entrepreneurs would be inspired by this interview, and we hope to make a delta change every time we take an interview. And I'm sure most of them are inspired and looking forward to this. Thanks. Thank you for coming to our show, and looking forward to this.